My childhood. I remember things that my auntie told me. Auntie was born in Vesisari, Norway behind Vadso, that was known as Anajoki. She moved to Petsamo as a young child. Petsamo had three Lap Sami families, Mati Panko, Laura Hans, and Maripik Larsen, who was called Poro Kuningata, reindeer queen. My auntie lived with this woman until she grew up. From childhood, she traveled around the Petsamo fjord with this woman. From a child until she grew up, she went salmon fishing, tended reindeer throughout the winter, chopped wood, and drove reindeer home. She did the work of both men and women, as there weren't men around, and her foster mother was elderly and ill. At the age of 20, she went to Norway, where in the spring she went to work fishing. There she met a Finnish fisherman and married him. In the fall after fishing season, they moved to Kola, where he was from. My father was a carpenter who built boats and houses. They had a large family, 7 boys and 1 girl. When he got very ill, he had injured his hand with a rusty nail. There were no doctors in those times, and no one knew how to treat him. So he died. He died during the night or early morning at 3 a.m., and I was born at 6 a.m., 3 hours later and 2 weeks earlier than I was due to be born. When I was a year and a half, my auntie moved back to Petsamo. She built a small peat turf house at Vuononranta shore that was later called Vuononkila village. In 1908, the Tsar of Russia wanted to populate Petsamo. He offered 300 rubles to anyone who was willing to relocate to Petsamo. After this, several hundred immigrants moved to Petsamo, coming from the Karelia region. They settled in the back of Petsamo Vuono fjord. This became a small church village named Parkinankila. Then a man called Mati Martimo moved to Petsamo from Kusamo. He went to fish in Norway and in winter returned to live in Petsamo, near the shore of Petsamo. A man called Heikki Karjalainen passed away. He had a large family and Mati moved in with this Karelian family. There were many children and he adopted them and helped to care for them. He would return to Norway early in the spring to go fishing. In the spring, when the leaves started to appear on the birch trees, my auntie would go inspect the trees to gather branches. From these she made vispiloita, whisks for cooking, and sauna victoria, sauna whisks. When the berries began to appear in the bushes and swamps, she would pick lingon berries, blueberries, and make jams. Lingon berries were plentiful on the slopes. In the fall, she would travel with Martimo to Norway to sell the jams. She would exchange the jams for food supplies to bring home coffee, sugar, flour, rice, and other supplies for winter. The food supplies weren't large, but enough to keep us going through the winter months. Winters were truly dark and bleak and long. Around November 25th, snow hit the ground, and the snow would stay on the ground until midsummer. In mid-November, the sun disappeared behind the mountain and would not be seen again until February 25th. You could sometimes see glimpses of the sun for about 10 minutes behind Linnahamari mountain. At the highest peak, you could see the sun on a clear day. There was a lot of snow, so much that you often wouldn't see houses at all. Winters were long, dark and bleak and stormy. Martimo often came out of his house by climbing through his window. Once out, he would dig a tunnel through the snow to open his door. Then he would climb onto our roof and yell through our chimney, "Is Maria still alive?" Aiti would answer through the chimney, "Yes, I suppose we're still alive." but we can't get out. We waited a bit while Martimo dug a tunnel so we could get out and open the door. We were back in daylight again, and Aiti was happy that we were out again in fresh air and didn't die of suffocation. We were surrounded by forest that had plenty of rabbits and grouse. Aiti would build a small circular fence using tree branches against a hillside. She would leave two small openings at either end and place some fresh sauna whisks or birch branches inside. Sometimes a rabbit would go inside the fence to eat the birch leaves. When they entered, Ati would cover the holes with more sauns, whisks, and branches. This way we sometimes could cook rabbit meat to put into our mouths. Ati would also use the birch branches to make traps. The traps were used to catch grouse. Sometimes we caught one or two grouse that we could eat. And so the days slowly passed forward one by one.
No.